Hi, this is Brandon, and welcome to Full the Darkness, Episode 4, Ride Along. Back when I was an undergraduate in college, my roommates and I went out on a Friday night, hitting a few house parties down by Fraternity Row. The night was like any other weekend. Finals were still 2 months out, and my roommates and I were feeling carefree. The first two houses we went to were friends' places. The first one was a total stoner fest, and my roomies and I didn't stay very long. We were looking for a little more excitement, and we went to the second house, which was packed. There were at least 100 people there, some we knew and most we didn't. My roommate Tess started getting a little claustrophobic, so we decided to go hang out on the back porch, and that's where we met Andy. He was out there having a cigarette by himself and agreed with Tess that the tiny house was a little too full for his taste. He took a liking to Tess, watching her intently as they chatted. I wasn't at all jealous, I'm not the type. Plus, he was a smoker, which is just gross to me. Andy kept getting text messages while we sat there, and they seemed to be amusing him. After a while, he apologized for being rude and explained that a few friends of his were having a small gathering on the other side of town, and asked if we'd like to come hang out there. He promised it would be much more chill than this place. In retrospect, I can see how stupid that might sound. Maybe we should have gathered our two other roommates first. But Andy seemed like a decent guy, not pushy or anything. Plus, I could tell Tess kinda had a thing for him. So we went, and we took him up on his offer to drive. The house wasn't exactly where he said it was. In fact, he kinda had a hard time finding it. We were on the outskirts of town with housing developments in view, but we were surrounded mostly by fields. I was nervous by this point and asked Andy if he was lost. He assured us that he wasn't lost, but he was clearly agitated. He couldn't seem to remember the directions his friend had given him. And that was the first giant bell that went off in my head. Wouldn't that address have been in his text message history? Tess hadn't really put that together, and I couldn't make eye contact with her because she was in the front seat, but I could tell she wasn't nearly as worried as I was. I told him it was okay if we didn't find the house, and that I'd forgotten something back at the house party anyway, so we should probably go back. Andy had pulled the car over at this point, and really wasn't listening to me. He was staring out the windows of the car, watching the streets behind us in the mirror. He was watching the empty streets as if he was waiting for someone, or something. He was fidgeting nervously, with his foot tapping the floorboard. When Tess went to turn on the radio, he swatted her hand down. She looked surprised and finally shocked when she saw he wasn't kidding around. Andy dug his phone out of his pocket and started texting. At this point, Tess turned to look at me in the back seat, and I saw fright in her eyes. I also saw something else. In the distance, through the windshield, I saw the headlights of a big truck, an 18-wheeler, cross the intersection at the end of the road, just a few hundred feet in front of us. Andy saw it too, and he sat up straight in his seat. His hand went for the key to start the car again, and then paused. He flicked the headlights once, just briefly. The truck immediately braked, blocking the intersection, and it began reversing. It was backing up so it could turn down the road. It was backing up in our direction. Tess cleared her throat and looked nervously at the truck. "Hey, that's kinda weird, isn't it?" "Isn't it, Andy?" "Hey, I think we should probably get going now, don't you?" "Yeah," I said. "I do think we do need to get going. Right now, Andy." Andy ignored us, not answering, but his eyes were fixed on the reversing truck, and what struck me hardest was how oddly calm he looked. Tess started to freak out then. "Andy, are you listening? Who's in that truck? Do you know them?" The truck was backed almost up to the car now. It hit its brakes and rolled to a stop. At this, Andy let out a long, heavy sigh of relief. Something possessed me then. The fight-or-flight instinct, that thing you always hear people talk about, it literally made me move against my will. As I sat there with terror growing in my gut at the dawning realization that we were in a very bad situation, I felt my right hand lift up, swing back my clenched cell phone, and smash it against Andy's skull. To this day, I can't believe how hard I hit him. The cell phone hit him like a hammer, driving his head into the window so hard I'm surprised it didn't shatter. "Run!" I screamed, slapping Tess's shoulder on the backswing. I hit him again. At least I think I did. My adrenaline was pumping so hard at that point that things get a little hazy in my memory. Andy groaned, stunned, and reached for something in his coat. But his hands weren't working right. His coordination was shot. The next thing I knew, I was being ripped out of the car by the arm. I took a swing at my attacker in blind rage, and thankfully I missed, because it was Tess. She dragged me away from the car and back to my senses. My legs started running. We ran as fast as we could. In the distance, I heard Andy shout, "Wait, don't go!" But by that point, we were 2 blocks away and back into the relative safety of neighborhood porch lights. We didn't stop running until we got to the 7-Eleven at the corner of 8th and Main. Tess had called the police on the way, and when we gave our statements at the gas station, the cops looked concerned and took our info, but they reminded us that no real crime had taken place. We made it back home safely, where we told our roomies about what happened. I don't know what Andy wanted, if that was even his real name, nor do I know what was in the back of that 18-wheeler, but I do know that whatever it wasn't good, and it's still out there. And that was the last night that I ever took a stranger up on an offer for a free ride.